Okay. Okay. Before we can get into the meat of anything, what I want to point out is that we are in a straight up confusing and treacherous part of the Old Testament, because what's going to happen is, up till now, did I put something back here? No. Up till now, we've been reading third person narratives. And that totally worked all throughout Judges and Samuel and Kings. And at the end of Chronicles, the bottom's going to fall out from under us, and there's not going to be a third person narrator telling us what's happening anymore. After we hit the end of Chronicles, which is here, it's all, the rest of the Bible is people who were there at their specific time telling us what was happening. Right? So what we should have done is taken a break halfway through First Chronicles to read all of this. All of these, some of these are major prophets, some of these are minor prophets. And then continued on through Second Chronicles, and then taken a break to read Joel, Obadiah, and these rad dudes. So this is a great thing to keep track of, because as you read those books for the rest of the year, you're going to want to know the context. What were they talking about? Because Amos is not facing the same situation that Joel is, well, Obadiah. We'll use Obadiah as a more reliable reference, because Joel, actually, we're not 100% sure where Joel comes from. Some of the stuff he talks about makes sense in this era, but some of the stuff he talks about makes more sense in this era. So there's actually a bunch of different places Joel could be, which reminds me, where's my pen? Usually when you see a timeline like this, there's like 6 Joels and they all have question marks after them. Oh, yeah, I already did that there. Great. Ruby. Okay, I've put the kings in red. Who cares? They're just there to help us mark the time. To make sense of this stuff and to tell us who the prophets were hanging out with. Now, what we really need to talk about is something called the Syro-Ephraimite crisis. Around this time, the Syro-Ephraimite crisis, we're stepping back in time a little bit because Assyria hasn't come knocking to take the northern tribes yet. What? Okay, no? Is that right? That can't be right. Yeah, cool. It's the S. Okay. Here's the deal. Assyria is the big bad guy in that period we just talked about. So we're talking, this is so confusing, late 700s, which is really the smaller number 700s, because BC, you're starting off big and you're working down to 0. So this is going to be the time of these kings and these prophets. These two are contemporaries, and they're best read together, because Isaiah is wealthy, urban, educated. Micah is a country boy. He comes from the shepherding zone down in the south of Judah. Micah's one of my favorites because he has a lot to say about the corrupting influence that city life is having upon the moral fiber of society. He's a little old-fashioned for someone who belongs to a hyper-conservative Iron Age society. Okay, so here's what's going to happen in the Syro-Ephraimite conflict. Assyria has problems. Don't you backtalk me. Assyria has problems. They've got, what are those guys called? Scythians. No, it's, yeah. That's wrong. Transpose the I and the Greek I. Okay, they've got Scythian raiders operating out of what is now called Ukraine in the north, preying on Assyrian settlements, payroll caravans, all kinds of crap. Assyria is an empire. It has to expand. The economics don't work if it's not consuming something. It can't go north. It can't go east because at a certain point it runs out of stuff to eat. It can't go south because Babylon is too old and too big to let it. Babylonia is considered a part of the Assyrian Empire, but there's some problems there that we'll get to in a minute. Assyria's only option is to go this way, link up with the Mediterranean, and hop on the bandwagon with what's left of the Phoenicians. They're called something different now, but they need to hook up with Phoenicians. And in fact, in all of the Assyrian naval campaigns that the Greeks tell us about, they never built their own ships. They paid Phoenicians to haul them around. So they need to go here. Okay, the Syro-Ephraimite conflict is like the first 10 chapters of the book of Isaiah. And the idea is, these guys know Assyria is coming. So what are they going to do about it? Well, their plan is to band together and make a plucky union of underdogs to fight off Assyria. I wrote Aram because when I say Syria, people get confused. It's Syria now, but at the time it was Aram. It's where the Aramaic language comes from. Okay, these guys want to band together and make a super team of underdog guys. These guys want to take these guys, beat these guys, and then use their money and their men to fight off these guys. These guys want to make a deal that says, hey, I'll give you these guys if you leave us alone. Classy. So what ends up actually happening, and this is all described all throughout the first few chapters of Isaiah. There's a section where it says, I think King James something says, the kings of Syria and Israel are confederate against me. Assyria comes knocking, busts down these guys, busts down these guys, gets to these guys, runs out of money. It is described in miraculous terms in the text that they could not come against Jerusalem. The truth is they couldn't afford to. The campaign had run out of money. So they gathered up these guys and deported them. That is what we call the Assyrian conquest. Okay, now let's redraw the map real quick. Fast forward. This is all Assyria now. We have to fast forward a ways. Yeah, okay. Hezekiah gets a special star because in a lot of Isaiah is talking to Hezekiah. They're just having conversations, and then he gets distracted and starts seeing crazy stuff. So he's a character in Isaiah. We get to Josiah the reformer. You guys have heard this story about a king who was ordering that the temple be rebuilt, and they found the book of the law? That's there. So this is late in the game. The northern kingdom has been gone forever. King Josiah takes the throne at like 12, and he is like, he's kind of a religious zealot. He consolidates the worship of Jehovah to just the temple and just the priests that he picks out. And so Josiah is known as the reformer. Here's a bunch of guys who have commentaries on life under him. This goes on. These two guys are kind of wild. Obadiah is really cool because his story, like, if you really want to see what's in Lehi's head, you need Obadiah, Isaiah, and just those two. Okay, great. At this point, this map is here in the story. Okay, so Assyria owns everything, but they've got another problem. Beside what this actually was Nineveh. Okay, beside a lot of political intrigue and emperors' inability to keep their heads, in Nineveh, Assyria has another problem. Two rogue colonial generals named Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuchadnezzar. King James renders them as Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuchadnezzar, their father and son. They're starting a rebellion. They're starting a civil war. And they're going to rally other colonies against Nineveh. And beside being, we'll say, gifted tacticians, Nebuchadnezzar is a bit of a fanboy of Hammurabi, who was a Babylonian emperor from 1,000 years before his lifetime. So, what letter even is that? There we go. Nope, it's not a K. Okay, the point is, these guys are going to march on Nineveh. And when they get there, with their conscript army, in their language, the name Nebuchadnezzar means Nebu, which is their principal god. Bless the heir, or the son. His identity is tied to being the son of Nebuchadnezzar Ashur. Okay, their principal god is Nebu. These guys show up here, and in what the Babylonian Chronicle describes as a gift from Nebu, unseasonable rains, they cause a tributary of the Euphrates to jump its banks, and one of Nineveh's defensive walls just sloughs off. And Babylonian troops walk through the mud and take the city. There was no siege of Nineveh. So they take Nineveh. A big feature in the early part of Isaiah, the first half of Isaiah, is that the guys who got their butts kicked by Assyria were going to rely on paying protection money to Egypt to protect them. Well, Judah still has that relationship with Egypt. And in fact, so much time has passed that Egypt actually has that relationship with Assyria now. So, the Egyptian army at this point is land raiders. So, hearing, way after the fact, that Nineveh has fallen, Egypt sends its mercenary forces to retake the city. By the time they reach Karshemish, Nebuchadnezzar's waiting, and in one move, he wipes out basically the Egyptian border control, and thus takes over the holding company that owns Judah's debt. And Judah now belongs to Babylon. You're not here anymore. You're kind of here. And at this point, Nebuchadnezzar finds out that his father has died in the capital. And he says, well, I should go do something about that. So he leaves. He doesn't even ever see Judah. And his guys show up and demand tribute and start what we call the Babylonian exile. The exile is the single most important thing in the history of Judaism. Okay, maybe second most important thing after Moses. Moses is a big deal in Judaism. But this is a huge deal in forming what we call the Bible and forming what we call Judaism. So, during this captivity, the new Babylonian overlords install a 22-year-old named Mattaniah, but we know him as Zechariah, in whose first year we meet Lehi. They pull out the upper-class educated people, the best of the best, and they deport them, because Nebuchadnezzar has this idea that if he builds suburbs around his capital city that are just full of the empire's people, he can create a very diverse and powerful think tank. He wants the best minds of the empire accessible to him for all kinds of projects he has planned, mostly architectural. So he takes the wealthy and educated and priestly. He takes Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those are not their actual names. Those are the names the colonizer gave them. And he takes Ezekiel, who is part of the high priestly family who runs the temple. He does not take Jeremiah. Jeremiah gets left behind because his family is not an important temple functioning Levite family. They're social services Levites. So Ezekiel's message is going to be all about God's presence in a world with no temple. And Jeremiah's message is going to be all about how we take care of the people around us and how we build community and stuff like that. And actually, I'm realizing too that Esther is set in this period. I cannot wait to get into Esther because it is the Bible's only comedy and it doesn't mention God once. I'm missing H. Okay. That was a lot of dry stuff, right?
Oh, that was good.
Here's the thing. The reason the history is important is because we're about to lose touch with the grounding. The end of Chronicles this is so weird that Chronicles does this. Chronicles says, yeah, this happened. This happened. Well, we're back now. And then just picks it up with Ezra and Nehemiah. I don't know why they put Zechariah as his own guy. Ezra and Nehemiah. So here is my game plan for essentially the rest of the year. This becomes the roadmap because each of these smaller books is going to come up one after the other in apparently no particular order. And it's going to be up to us to keep track of where in the story that was happening. The fact that Ezekiel and Jeremiah are contemporaries from actually rival priestly houses is crucial to understanding their place in the exilic world. Micah and Isaiah's relationship in a pre-exilic world is a key factor in reading both of them. So, yeah, we're going to get into all of these as they come up, but we have to remember how they relate to each other. Joel, you weirdo, nobody knows how you relate to anything. Okay, so Chronicles ends here. They went away to captivity, they stayed, I think, 70-ish years. They come back, and Jerusalem is a wreck, and it's been taken over by Samaritans, the people that Assyria left behind, and a bunch of Judeans who don't know anything about what everyone experienced in Babylon. You now have two Judeas. And so we end up in a funny situation. Chronicles, some people believe that Chronicles, Ezra, and Nehemiah were all one book once upon a time because of the main themes and the writing style. But here are the big points of Ezra. Let's actually just go there. Let me just read you the thing. It is weird to me that we're doing Ezra next, but it does make a certain sense because, like, there's the third person, the third person narrative ends with those two. But they're back from Babylon, and it's so weird to jump that far into the future from where we just came. Oh my gosh. Sorry guys. My JPS translation has a completely different book order. And I've forgotten where Ezra and Nehemiah fall.
You want to just read from this one?
Yeah, you've got a section heading, don't you? An introduction?
Yeah, it just says Ezra. And that says the end of Babylonian captivity is the first chapter.
Okay, interesting.
Then goes into two, it's like list of the returned exiles.
Chapter 1 in King James Version. King Cyrus of Persia lets the Jews go back to Jerusalem to build the temple. Cyrus returns the vessels of the house of the Lord taken by Nebuchadnezzar.
Great, okay. Thank you. I'm trying to get the... Whoa. I had this marked earlier today. There's an essay here that I want to share with you. Okay, we got Nehemiah. Okay, we got a hit. check this out. Ezra and Nehemiah begins where Chronicle ends. It's written as a continuation of Chronicles and contains historical traditions, significant liturgical developments in the newly reconstituted Second Temple community, and preserves important genealogical lists of returnees, priests, Levites, and other leadership of temple personnel. And in presenting this material concerning the early post-exilic period, Ezra and Nehemiah emphasizes repeatedly the continuity within the Israelite pre-exilic past. Ezra explicitly appropriates Mosaic authority, as he is represented as giving the Torah, in a kind of repetition of the Sinai event. Ezra and Nehemiah insist that their legal innovations are already part of the Mosaic Torah, and that they are accurate applications of Mosaic Torah and have authoritative Mosaic status. Okay, here's what is so complex. You guys ever stop and think about, has anybody ever read Letter from Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King Jr.? Okay. He is remembered as a brilliant, eloquent speaker and preacher and leader. The fire of a Southern Baptist preacher is all over this thing. This is hot. This is angry. This is hot enough to singe the eyebrows off of Alabama, the abstract concept of Alabama. 10 years later, the swamp rock classic Sweet Home Alabama comes out. There's only 10 years between these two worlds, and they both talk about a lot of the same things. But this one is overwhelmingly positive, and this one is overwhelmingly negative. And the tension there is something that we shouldn't ignore. It's important to understanding both. The world that the perspective that each of these come from is important to understanding the tension in the other. Ezra and Nehemiah come back to a shattered Jerusalem. They are not prophets. They never talk to God. They are civic leaders. Ezra tells all of the Levites living in Jerusalem that they were wrong to take Samaritan women and have half-breed children, and they should divorce those women and kick them all out. Well, all the while Malachi is saying, tell me more about how cool God is with divorce. Nehemiah says, we got to build a wall. We got to keep all the infidels out. While Zechariah says, city of God's supposed to have a temple so all nations can flow unto it. What are we going to do with a wall? There is tension between the civic leaders and the actual prophets in the situation. And that tension is central to understanding the four books. And they come as a pack. So next week we're supposed to read Ezra and Nehemiah. Not to pile on, but it would be pretty handy to experience these two with them. Because a lot of times we get taught Zechariah as the weird Z one, and Malachi as the last one that talks about genealogy or something no one quite remembers. He's talking about a lot more, and he's in a lot of ways trying to adjust for the crazy political nonsense that Ezra is doing. And Zechariah, same thing for Nehemiah. Any questions about that? This is, okay, can we take a time out real quick? I was raised to read the Bible as a magical power talisman that would tell me what supernatural things I was supposed to believe in. And I had a teacher who explained to me that the list of Babylonian officials at the beginning of Esther aren't actual Babylonian names. They're Babylonian sounding names. It's meant to be like a Babylonian racial stereotype of a people that don't exist anymore. Written for an audience, it doesn't exist anymore. But, early 4th century Jews reading Esther would have been howling on the floor laughing that the king has, Nebuchadnezzar has an advisor named Melmucan. Of course there's a Melmucan. Why aren't there 10 Melmucans? right? The names given here are like, hey, it's me, Iptaluca from Hallway C, right? They're just stereotypes. And when I realized that they were that human, that there's that much going on, that the political intrigue hiding under the surface here of this story is more than prophet good, people bad, so they didn't listen to him. And I learned that it was all maybe the most complex library of literature ever assembled. I thought, man, I missed out on a lot of stuff when this is a boring one and this is a boring one and these are two boring ones that might be related. Like, no, they're having a fight. And reading all four, reading these two as one side and these two as another side is important to understanding the after effects of their stuff, of their whole, like, cochinada, with, mess, I guess, is a polite way to say that. Okay. That said, as a forecast, let's do some housekeeping, actually. So, when we get to Isaiah, there's a problem because there's actually two Isaiahs. Again, S was totally missing. Isaiah 1 and Isaiah 2, that's 40 and beyond. I fully intend to talk about the two different Isaiahs and how the trickle-down effect of their subject matter impacts the Isaiah quotes in the Book of Mormon, because Jacob quotes one and Nephi quotes the other. And so if you can lock in what this one's talking about, then you get what Nephi's talking about. If you lock in where he's going, you get where Jacob is going. The other thing I want to call out is when we do Daniel, Daniel is so big. Can somebody check the schedule, the curriculum, and tell me if Daniel is its own day or if it's lumped in with something? Oh, my phone's recording.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a ways out.
I know, I have to go month by month.
Yeah.
I do what? Esther way before.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Esther's a short one. Esther's one where I think we're actually just gonna read it. Like, we could read it in an hour.
They do like 2 months of Isaiah.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Daniel not till November.
Okay. Is it its own block?
Yeah.
Okay, thank goodness. This is the day. Okay. The problem with Daniel is that it is an awesome example of apocalyptic literature. So whacked out visions and freaky heart, death metal monsters and all kinds of stuff, which is going to be our platform for going back and understanding what happened with Ezekiel a few months earlier. But the other thing about Daniel is that even though it's set in this time period, it's actually, we believe, written in the intertestamental period after Malachi. So it actually comes from a much more Greek Judea. And the century that Daniel comes from is at least as interesting as the extremely interesting stories described in the book of Daniel. So, like, work cut out for us there. And then the other thing is, the intertestamental period is pretty good. We'll get to talk about the Maccabees and the Apocrypha at that point. And then somewhere, I kind of want to slot in Song of Solomon. I don't think that's going to come up in our week, but like, we could talk about ancient Iron Age erotica, right? It's in the book. We're all carrying it around. Okay. Okay, now we got some time, let's have some first-hand experiences with Ezra and Nehemiah. That's so bizarre.
It's weird, like Esther before Isaiah, and then Daniel 3 months later, you know?
Wait a minute. How are they organized in King James? Yes, high and mighty hand of James. Very impressed. They're going in book order.
Is that what they're doing? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, I'm glad actually that came up because I've been trying to figure out like what is up with this schedule. Why did we like max acceleration collide with Ezra and Nehemiah right now? And we haven't even talked to anybody who actually got exiled yet. And we're talking about the return from exile, which is a stunt that Isaiah is going to pull on us halfway through. The first 39 chapters of Isaiah are pre-Assyria, and the second half is post-Babylon. I don't know if we ever talked about this. The Jewish Bible is organized into 3 sections. The Torah, that's not a letter, I don't think. We call it the law, but it's really better rendered as the teaching. The Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Ketuvim. My U's look like V's. Because I'm a Roman plant. The writings, the folk tales. So what this does is it's organized completely differently internally. So obviously this is the first 5. And then I think you actually hit this next because of, no, actually I think Joshua is listed in the prophets. You end up with books being sorted in funny ways. So Daniel, for example, isn't under the prophets. He never talks to God. He's under the folk writings with Esther and Ruth and the Psalms. Yeah, so they must just be going off of the book order in King James, which is crazy and detached from the reality of the storyline. Okay. Sorry. I just noticed that I had this note here. Ezra and Nehemiah are Ketuvim, because they're not prophets either. And they actually come right after Daniel, which I appreciate. Can we go to Ezra 6? Do I have Cyrus's tetrahedron? At first, I really didn't think I was going to like having a pulpit here because it seemed pretentious, but I will say the extra desk space is appreciated. Too far.
Well, you have a pulpit, you have to do hellfire and damnation.
Huh?
You're a pulpit, you do hellfire and damnation.
Do we have time for a stupid story? Yeah, we probably do. Okay. In my mission, we all had call signs. Everybody had a nickname. El Duki was Elder Ramirez. He pooped his pants in the middle of the zone conference. Elder Olson was also El Dookie, but that's just because everyone hated him. Elder Ramos was El Cuate. Cuate is like dude, or the way it was used 10 years ago is like dude. And he had a very specific speech pattern, dude, where he would work in dude as a filler word, dude, all the time. And you would know, dude, when he got to the apex, the high point of a story, dude, because the dudes would become more frequent, dude. And he's the main character in the story coming up. But Elder Canfield's call sign was Captain America, because he punched a crackhead down 3 flights of stairs.
Where did you go?
Southern Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, this guy downstairs came up and started punching in our windows, and we were scared because there's a cokehead punching in our windows, knocking over our furniture from outside. We had bars on the windows, and Canfield just goes out there and lays this dude out, and then he calls the president to he's fully expecting to go home for having struck a man in anger. He says, "Presidente, I'm sorry. I hit a man. He was trying to break in, and I punched him good." And I just hear Presidente start cackling, just absolutely laughing his butt off. He never called that man Elder Canfield again after that. He was Captain America. He would ask Captain America to give the opening prayer in his own conference after that. Anyway, mine was El Tlacuache, which is Aztec word for possum. Our president had the pulpit pounding gene, we'll call it. He'd get up there and he'd just rail on us, just banging on the thing. And I didn't find that particularly motivating and thought it was a little ridiculous. Well, Elder Ramos, El Cuate, believed, he sort of bought into that school of leadership. So one day we're sitting in a district conference. It's like 6 of us in there. And he's smacking on one of these little primary tables and just trying to do his best Presidente Gardner impersonation. And it's falling flat because every third word is Cuate. Like yeah, exactly. Come on, you wicked dudes. You gotta get out there, dudes. You gotta baptize some dudes. It was completely crazy. So the move is, after you have verbally smitten everyone, you have to storm out because you're so disgusted with the wickedness. So he leaves. His companion rolls his eyes and follows him out because we're doing this again. And being that I had not ever taken the situation very seriously at all up to that point, I immediately jumped to the front of the room and re-delivered the entire diatribe, replacing the word cuate with the word tlacuache, possum, because it is both more difficult and funnier to say. And so by the end of it, I've given this whole speech about wicked possums, and there's a guy, his name was Elder Becerra. The dude was so intense. I once asked him how he was doing, and he told me he was ready to bleed on the flag to keep the stripes red. And I was like, cool, dude. You eat any good restaurants lately? So anyway, by the end of it, even he is like on the floor laughing. And he coined the term tlacuache, and somehow it spread. So I would like go to towns I'd never been to, and they're like, tlacuache this guy. And that's how I got my call sign. It wasn't for anything cool, it was just for my own disdain for authority figures. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, this is actually what I meant to show you. Somewhere in here, I've got King Cyrus's seal. Exile. Jehoiakim. Where are you? Yeah, there we go. The Cyrus cylinder. So this is a speech of Cyrus. This is a really funny point in the Bible where we start talking about guys we can prove are real. Like when it was David and Saul, we couldn't do that. We had every now and then a couple of guys. So this thing is just covered in cuneiform writing, both sides, and it's meant to be rolled onto clay tablets. It's a stamp. You roll it out on clay tablets to reproduce it. Side note, we talked about Babylon burning down Nineveh. something really cool. There is YouTube channel Curator's Corner with the British Museum by Irving Finkel. I think it's just Irving Finkel. For some reason I want to say Finkelstein, but I think it's just Irving Finkel. The world's foremost expert on ancient Assyrian board games and witchcraft. They always go together. The reason the British Museum has like 10,000 Assyrian tablets out of Nineveh is that Nineveh kept all of its records on clay tablets. And when the Babylonians were coming, they buried them all in the mud in front of the gate, assuming the troops would walk over them and then burn the city, but not the writings. They were wrong. A ton of burning buildings fell onto where the writings had been built. But because they're all clay tablets, it all glazed in the earth. And it made it harder to destroy. And so the British Museum, hashtag colonizers stealing stuff, the British Museum has a ton of Assyria's writings. The Library of Nineveh is supposed to be 10 times what the Library of Alexandria was, but it was all buried and burned. Anyway, that's a cool, fun thing going on. Sorry, I showed you the thing. Okay, we just looked at Cyrus's hedron, Cyrus's tube thing. Somebody pick it up from chapter 6. Ezra 6.
The decree of Darius. Then King Darius made a decree, and they searched the archives where the documents were stored in Babylon. But it was Escaban,
Mm-hmm.
the capital in the province of Madrid, that a scroll was found on which this was written, a record. In the first year of his reign, King Cyrus issued a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house be rebuilt, the place where sacrifices are offered and burnt offerings are brought. Its height shall be 6 cubits, and its width 60 cubits, with 3 course of hewn stones and 1 course of timber. Let the costs be paid from the royal treasury. Moreover, let the gold and silver vessels of the house of the God that Nebuchadnezzar took out of the temple in Jerusalem and brought to Babylon be restored and brought back to the temple in Jerusalem, each of its place, and shall put them in the house of God.
Okay, thanks. This is a central feature of this story, that after Babylonian captivity, Cyrus, who is remembered as the goodly emperor, goes, why do we have all these guys here? And why do we have a bunch of stolen gold here? Just go home. Just go, we're gonna send some money. Go build your thing and go live back over there. And that's what kicks it all off. That's how the return from exile happens, and that's how the Second Temple period starts. So you hear this sometimes.
Now, why did he do that? It just seems...
It's not good business, that's for sure. We don't know. Letting them go seems to me like something that is likely to have happened. Committing money to it, I don't know. I don't know about that one. It seems like one of those set dressing things where it's to explain the next story. Why are Ezra and Nehemiah not in Babylon? What was I about to write? Yeah, it's super weird to just have a complete reversal on the grounds that different king. Cyrus, but here's the thing. Here's what's interesting. Cyrus is not Babylonian. Cyrus is Persian. We're going to call him Nebi. It's Babylonian. Okay, so it's going to go Nebuchadnezzar, Cyrus, Darius the Mede is going to show up. The Median. But they're kind of mixed in, these guys. It's not really one after the other. It's okay, Medians are in charge now. And then, everybody's favorite, Alexander. But But this is in the intertestamental period when Daniel is made. Well, and then obviously after that comes Caesar. Which I've never known how to write in
C-A-E.
English. How?
C-A-E.
A-E.
S-A-R.
It's like Kaiser.
I was gonna write Cesar. So this is another one, like our timeline, it's useful for understanding the flow of the stories. But it's also useful for that statue dream that shows up in Daniel. In fact, let's talk about that. In Daniel, there's a story, the king has a vision, there's like a statue made of a bunch of weird stuff. The top, I think, is gold, and the next part is silver, and then he has like an iron chest, and then like iron and mud legs or something, iron and clay legs.
The feet are clay.
The feet are clay, okay, but it's on a rock also. It's like standing on the rock is an important thing. So here's the thing. The story is set here. And if we understand it as a prophecy, then Nebuchadnezzar is foretelling all the progressively worse guys that come after him. But all our evidence seems to show it was written here and is retroactively describing these guys, which would explain why it doesn't really account for these guys. There's also this like really interesting property of the book of Daniel where it was written centuries after this that explains why it contains so many ahistorical details. Like Daniel talks about kings who were never kings, or it says that people were related but they're not related, or they held some office but that office isn't a Babylonian office, it's like a Persian bureaucrat. So there's just like a lot of stuff going on in Daniel, but this flow of big bads in the neighborhood is important to the rest of the story. Okay. Can somebody jump to, the trick is to find a piece that tells us the story without giving us a bunch of weird names. Can somebody go to 619? Of Ezra.
And the children of the captivity kept the Passover from the 14th of the first month. You want?
Yeah, please.
For the priests and the Levites were purified together. All of them were pure and killed the Passover for all the children of captivity, for their brethren, the priests, and for themselves. And the children of Israel, which were come again out of the captivity. And all such had separated themselves unto them, and the filthiness of the heathen of the land, to seek the Lord God of Israel, did eat, and keep the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy. And the Lord made them joyful, and turned the heart of the king of Syria unto them, to strengthen their hands and the work of the house of God, the God of Israel.
Okay, thank you. The reason we read that is there's this weird detail. So, everyone's celebrating Passover at the temple, or what's left of it. Again, that's huge. It's been over a generation. Nobody's coming back who left. These are people who only know about the temple, and in fact, the city of Jerusalem, by secondhand experience. So, whatever priests are left, they come together, they celebrate Passover. It's touching. And then they call Darius an Assyrian king. We just said he's Persian. And in fact, this is so funny. Josephus, the historian Josephus, retells this story, but correctly labels him in that verse as Persian. That's just like a weird error that crept in. Probably by somebody who was not familiar with the time period. Which is awesome. Whitney and I were meditating on this. This happens, it's called history compression. The farther away you get from something, the more all that stuff in the past just is samey. Yeah, for you guys, the past is that way. So think about this. If I were to say, George W. Bush said, "Read my lips," who would catch the error in this room? You have people who were there, right? Or people who know about it. Random Gen Z off the street wouldn't know, wouldn't catch it. And that's not that long ago. Yeah, she raised her hand, she knew it.
You know the difference? Okay.
There is no version of this where your kids are not impressive. There's a picture hanging up out here of some kids pulling a handcart during Trek. And it is of an event during Trek called the Women's March. I think it's Women's Pull. You can see the guys lined up in the back. And the idea is that it commemorates the men leaving for the Mormon battalion. And the women pulling handcarts?
The battalion was way before handcarts.
10 years. 10 years. When my great-great-great-great-grandfather joined the Mormon battalion as one of the very last volunteers, it's one of my favorite things about him. It's like, oh, this guy's really gonna go to war in the middle of nowhere? Well, hold on, I'll just wait. Just ride this one out. And then literally, in the last company, he volunteers to be a wagon driver. His wife drove an ox cart the rest of the way. Handcarts didn't show up until fully a decade later. This event that is commemorated in that image is a pastiche. It's vibes, it's pioneer vibes. It's not an actual historical reenactment or commemoration of anything that actually happened. Well, okay, that wasn't even 200 years ago. And the George W. Bush thing wasn't even 30 years ago. It's easy to let all of this stuff get compressed because not only is it alien, it's from a different continent, a different century, and a different culture that doesn't exist anymore. The other danger is that we write over it with our own stuff. And the problem with writing over it with our own beliefs and like cultural assumptions is that not only are we inserting a bunch of fake stuff, but we're missing what's there. Which is actually, I've shown my hand, that's the thesis for our day on Job. Because Job is a blast. When it's not being shoehorned into some message about the resurrection or some such thing. Thanks for being here, you guys. It's good to have a full house again. Not that Dave and I didn't have fun. There was a couple weeks where it was just me and Dave though. And we turn off the recording and do whatever we wanted. Like and subscribe! I had to say that for my mom, who is the only subscriber to the channel. That's it. Questions? Anybody want to do a prayer? Anybody have any comments? I sure appreciate you guys.
It's gonna be, like trying to piece it all together.
Dude,
How you explained it, I was all like, with it jumping.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But it's almost like if anybody read Game of Thrones, right?
Yes.
It's like, here's what this person's doing. Then at the same time period, they go to another character. And they're just across the continent doing something.
Yes.
But it's all happening at the same time.
It's like trying to see a Star Wars. Okay, when Whitney and I met, Whitney was super into Star Wars. But that was 2012, so something like 8 Star Wars movies have come out since then. And every time we go to see one, she says, "When is this?" And I have to be like, "Oh yeah, see, in order to understand that guy, you'd have to be on the Fortnite special event that happened on such and such a date, and this person's from a comic book, and this person's from 2 movies ago, and his name's Gleb Shido. And just like, it's impossible now. It used to be there was 5, yeah. If you read the book and you watched the special webisode and you got the special thing out of your Wheaties box, you'll know who this guy is. And it's that convoluted. God be with us. I'm gonna take extensive photos of this so that as we go through these guys, we can refer back and be like, okay, we're in Hosea. Okay, Hosea is X number of years before the Babylonian captivity. He's a couple decades before Isaiah, and we'll try to orient ourselves as we lock in for the rest of the minor prophets. But when it comes to the Ketuvim, when it comes to Job and Psalms and Proverbs, we don't have that. That stuff just is. We can talk about the century it came from, but we can't talk about the century it talks about because it's just abstract, like treatises on stuff.
You don't think Psalms is King David then?
I think some of it has a root in King David. Actually, maybe even a lot of it. I think that a lot of it talks about stuff after David. And also, Psalms is funny because it forms this Psalms. Nope. Never mind what I was about to say. Psalms is funny, but for reasons other than I was thinking just now. I think some of it has a root in Davidic poetry because it matches a lot of the style of David talking in Samuel, 2 Samuel. But see, we run into the same issue where in order to understand what he's talking about, we would have to map out his story and lock it in because it's like, oh yeah, he was really depressed in a cave. Well, which time is it that he's in a cave? He goes in like 4 caves over the course of 2 Samuel. And in one cave, he's about to knife Saul while he's taking a dump. It says he covered his feet, but that's a euphemism. He pooping. Yeah, Psalms is gonna be wild because I'm gonna have to do this all over again for just David's storyline. And I just remembered I promised you guys I was gonna get a copy of First Enoch, and I gotta so that we could talk about apocalyptic literature. I gotta figure out where to slot that in. I'm a little scattered today. Sorry, guys. Let's go. Let's get out of here. You guys want to do a prayer? Let's do it. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful we could be gathered here. We're thankful to learn more about the scriptures. Please bless us that thy spirit will be with us, and please help us that we can learn more. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, did you learn anything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
All the euphemisms for poop.
Yes.